race director with Moto America. But we're going to talk, Rick, maybe at the end of the show a little bit about that, maybe get a quick Daytona 200 update. But tonight we're going to go back and talk about one of the great riders who we lost far too early in Tom Walther, and importantly, the restoration project that Darryl Fletcher has already started on, talk about how that all came about. And of course, Steve Dick was very much a part, and Steve, I had a chance to look at that Superbike National from '87 at Westwood. What a race, what a last lap. We're going to have you relive that on the show tonight. But it's 8 p.m. Eastern, so we'll get started. And as always, off the top, Stuart Nodell, my co-host and producer with Nodell's Notes. Stuart, take it away.
Thanks, Pat. Just want to welcome the guys here. Looking forward to a great conversation. And in news this week, Pat, first up is Mike Grass, the rider that was injured at CTMP earlier this year. His 2009 Kawasaki ZX6R with a whole list of really good accessories and parts, beautiful Akrapovic exhaust system. It's for sale for $8,000. Pat Barnes is the guy you want to talk to acquire the bike. So if anybody's interested, go on the SOAR Facebook group page. The bike's there with all the details. There's too many items for me to list, but it's got Öhlins rear shock and front suspension. And the bike's a good bike. Could make a great amateur sport bike or even a great bike for track days. So get a hold of Pat Barnes, and the bike's available for $8,000.
Yeah, well, Pat, Mike put the bike up for sale. Pat bought it for the asking price of $8,000. And Pat, who's got lots of motorcycles, he's got the bike up for sale. As you said, would make a great amateur bike. Or if you're looking at a Kawasaki for track days in 2022. And hopefully next week on the show, we'll get an update on how Mike's doing. I know he's back home, still recovering, and we wish him all the best.
And in MotoGP news, Pat, what I read actually an article on it last week, and I didn't get to it in Nodell's notes, but MotoGP is moving to sustainable fuels beginning in 2024 in the Premier class only, where they're going to require at least 40% of non-fossil fuel energies. And by 2027, it'll be 100%, and it'll run across all classes. So I think there's going to be big changes coming in MotoGP.
Yeah, and big changes, I think, coming in motorcycle road racing right across this North American continent and around the world as we move away from fossil fuel and powered motorcycles. So we'll see what happens, and maybe we'll get Steve, Rick, and Darryl's thoughts on where they think that's all going to go.
And in the Talent Cup news, Pat, I covered last week, there was an update as of December 1. They're going to be running 7 events for the year on aboard the Aprilia RS250s. And they're going to run in conjunction with Moto America for both their first event at Circuit of the Americas in conjunction with MotoGP, and the final event of this season at Barber Motorsport Park. And then in between, they'll be running along with 5 of the WERA National Series. And some of the criteria, riders must be between the ages of 13 and 16. There will be a total of 20 riders selected for 2022. It'll increase to 26 riders in 2023, and the age restriction will change to minimum age of 14. And basically, if you get selected to the program, the purchase price is going to be $13,950 plus shipping and taxes. And the bikes is distributed out of Pennsylvania, so that's American pricing. And with the package, if you get accepted, you get 7 sets of Dunlop tires and 2 KYT helmets. And then there's some additional costs. There's an admin fee, and I believe this is the entry fee. It wasn't specifically mentioned, but it's $1,650 per rider. And there's a $1,500 deposit refunded at the end of the season if you complete all of the rounds. So looks like there's some exciting stuff happening, and for the young riders that are looking to become future MotoGP stars.
Well, it'll be interesting to see whether any Canadian riders end up in that program.
Yeah, certainly following Tony's Sharpless's program, I think maybe in the next year or two, we'll start to see riders graduate to this. And then our guest from last week, Alex Coelho, had an outstanding race at Homestead this past weekend, Pat, and I think he's looking pretty excited and looking forward to the Daytona 200 for 2022.
Yeah, I spoke to Alex this morning. He was on his way to Charleston, South Carolina to drop off the bike where Kevin Hunt with KWS is building him a Moto America Super Sport spec motor for Daytona. He'll, of course, continue on to Montreal after delivering the bike, and we'll be back in early March to pick up the bike ready to go for Daytona. I think based on what we've seen from Alex in the past, no problem qualifying within the 110% of the pole time. So he was pretty excited, had a bunch of top rides. He won both of the Formula 40 middleweight class, and then he had a bunch of other podium finishes in heavyweight and middleweight super sport. So good weekend for him. His two concerns going in, of course, was the shoulder that was operated on. That was fine. And of course, also had surgery for the arm pump. That was fine. But did have some problems on Sunday with, I guess, doing a lot of hard braking, wore out the brake pads, I think, that cost him a few spots. But a great weekend for Alex, as he did finally get in that race, and he'll be back at Daytona in March.
And then it looks like it's an early Christmas for our friend Darren James from also the West Coast. So it's fitting this evening. We've got all the West Coast guys on with us. He's got an Attack Yamaha prepared or Yamaha R6 coming for the 2022 Daytona 200.
Yeah, and exchanged a couple of emails with Darren. He's really looking forward to riding this new R6 that, of course, has been built to Moto America Super Sport spec rules. He's also going to be in Daytona, I believe, in January. They've got a test day for his twins class machine, so he'll be a busy rider at Daytona running both the Moto America Twins and the Daytona 200. So it's still early, but it looks like we've got two Canadian entries for the Daytona 200, Darren James and Alex Coelho, and I'm sure we'll have a few more before we get to March.
And then another Yamaha news, the Estenson American Flat Track team has confirmed their plans with JD Beach returning to run their Super Twins program. He's had a lot of success in the TT tracks, but they're looking to further develop that program, as well as Dallas Daniels, who's the two-time singles champion, is joining him in the Super Twins Premier class. Yeah,
I think it looks like American Flat Track is going to have another great season in 2022. And that'll all kick off at Daytona.
And then here's the When Honda Went Dirt Track Racing book that we had mentioned last week, Pat. And just wanted to give it another shout out, written by Gerald Foster and Chris Carter. And it looks to be a pretty fascinating book.
Yeah, and the reason we're bringing this up, take two, is I found out there's more than one Chris Carter in the world, not the famed late Chris Carter, the motor journalist that we announced with so many years at Daytona, and also hosted his own Chris Carter radio show that was a must-see and do during Bike Week. But this is Chris Carter, who is with Motion Pro. He's an avid Honda RS 750 fan, and writer Gerald Foster has put this book together, and it should be released shortly. If you want more information, or maybe you can put in your order for the book, there you see Chris Carter with Motion Pro's email address. And I believe it's going to be a big bookstore, almost 500 pages, with lots of stories in the background, how Honda took on Harley Davidson and the XR 750.
Yeah, it looks cool for sure, Pat. And then just wrapping things up, John McGuinness has announced that he's going to be returning to the TT aboard a Honda Fireblade in 2022, and he's a 23-time winner, so he's just a few behind the the famous Joey Dunlop.
Yeah, glad to see that after being canceled in 2020 and again this year, that the Isle of Man is moving ahead, and McGuinness certainly knows his way around that racetrack.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's it in Nodell's notes, Pat. So I'll stop sharing my screen and you can get into conversation with the guys.
Well, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Darryl Fletcher, who I've been in conversation and exchanging emails with for, really since the early days of Track Announcer's Notebook, talking about his nomination of Steve Crevier into the BC Sports Hall of Fame. That's still an ongoing project. But when Darryl mentioned to me that he had purchased the Tom Walther X VFR 750 that he won the National in 1987 with, I thought it would be great to have him on, not just talk about the bike, but let people know a little bit more about Tom Walther, who left us far too early. I think he was on the verge of really taking off with his road racing career that sadly ended in October at Fuji Raceway of 1987. Darryl, Rick, and Steve, great to have you on the show. Darryl, first of all, take us through how this project all came about.
Yeah, okay, Pat. Thanks for having me on, Pat and Stuart. By the way, I always enjoy this show whenever I can see it. I kind of always wanted to be kind of the caretaker of Tom's bike, and this goes back quite a few years. Penny, my wife, was really supportive of this, and she just said, well, just, when you see Doris, just mention it to her that if her and Gerhard ever wanted to find the motorcycle a new home, that we would definitely be interested. So as time went on, there's a couple times I'd spoken them to about it, and I didn't think they were quite ready, and that's fine too. But a little more than a month ago, Andrea Ferber, Tom's sister, messaged me and said, "Are you still interested in the motorcycle?" And Penny and I said yes. So we went and met with Andrea's husband, Kim, at Doris's house. She doesn't live there anymore because she's in a home, but the motorcycle was there, and Penny and I threw an offer at it, and Andrea and Kim were happy with it, so we got the motorcycle.
And what kind of shape is the bike in compared, and we'll look at some of the pictures of that bike as it came off the racetrack after that amazing win in 1987, and the guy he beat is one Steve Dick, and we're going to talk about that race and the last lap and your connection with the Honda 750s. How much work have you got to do, and what's the completion date?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit. Gerhard Walther, Tom's dad, who passed away in the spring of 2019, had started to put Tom's bike back to street legal condition. So it has a stock front end on it. It has stock carburetors. The HRC carburetors aren't there. The HRC air duct isn't there. But it's the same motorcycle. The bodywork had been painted and all the decals are missing. But it was something to work with. And in just talking with Kim Ferber, Gerhard had a lot of fun working on his son's bike for a good year or so before Gerhard passed away. And that kind of warmed my heart. The challenge, though, was would I be able to find any of the removed parts that link it to being on the racetrack? And Kim gave me a few leads as to where the parts could be. I was able to find the front end, so the forks, front wheel, and brakes, which definitely I will put back on the motorcycle. The carburetors haven't turned up, but we can get it running with stock carburetors. I fired it up the other night. I cleaned the carburetors and jumpered the fuel pump and got it running, but it promptly squirted about a liter of oil out on my shop floor. It popped out the oil filter O-ring, so I suspect that maybe the oil passages are plugged or something. So that motor definitely has to come apart. And if I'm going to take it apart, I'll try and freshen it up. And from there, I'll try and put the front end on and get the decals looking just like it was raced by Tom.
Well, one of the hopes is that on the show tonight, maybe there is somebody who is tuned in that knows where some of those parts that were on the race bike in '87, where some of those race parts have ended up. I want to bring Rick Hobbs in because Rick, you were Tom Walther's mechanic in 1987. Tell us a little bit about the bike and how that bike was all put together, and how you got it to the level where this thing was winning national championships.
Well, it's a bit of a long story. I'll try to give the readers.
We have an hour.
Okay, well, so we Tom and I had worked together the year previous, and you know, he had discussions with a few different dealerships and manufacturers about 1987, and wound up working a deal with Honda Canada and Surrey Honda, and got the bike. And then we made contact with American Honda to get the kit parts that were available from HRC. So we took a road trip with the bike down to California. And that would have been, gosh, I forget the month, but it was in the wintertime. And took the bike down with us, and actually were loaned some shop space at Yoshimura to put the bike together. And I thought, wow, that's pretty generous of them. But in retrospect, I think they figured they could get a little insight into their competition by seeing the bike in their shop. So, but anyway, we put most of the parts together on the bike there, took it to Willow Springs and did a bit of a shakedown, and then back to Vancouver, and we we're planning to do the nationals, and along the way decided that we would try and do some of the AMA nationals as well. So some of the details are a little vague for me these days, but the bike turned out to be pretty decent bike. We had some help from Yoshimura Northwest. We wound up getting the forks from through them, and I'm not quite sure about some of the other chassis parts, the brake rotors and the brakes and so on, but in any case, we wound up building it into a super bike, and competed at the Westwood club events, and then Canadian nationals. And yeah, Tom and I hit the road, and we spent quite a bit of time driving back and forth across Canada and the US, and had some success and some adventures, and it was a good time. And Tom really took to the bike, and I was quite impressed with how he was doing with it, and especially in the AMA competition. I think we raced 4 events and wound up in the top 10 in 3 of them. So that was pretty heady times for a couple guys that were basically club racers. So
Rick, one of those AMA races, I believe, was at Laguna Seca, where Tom finished in the top 10. Did that get you any attention from American Honda, where you maybe started to get some new bits and pieces for the bike, where by the time it got to Westwood later that year, it was maybe better than it was at the start of the Canadian Championship?
we didn't really get anything more in the way of trick parts. For the most part, we had kit parts on the bike. We did get some good help from them when we needed replacement parts. I recall when we were in Loudon, we had an engine problem and needed a cylinder head. And the team manager at the time, Gary Mathers, was flying from California to New Hampshire. And we managed to get in touch with Brian Uchida at American Honda in time for him to get Gary to hand carry a cylinder head for us to Loudon. So we were able to, when he got there, get the head from him and assemble the head and put it together overnight. One of many overnight work sessions on race weekends. And yeah, I wound up racing there. And I think at Loudon, we wound up finishing right behind Doug Chandler on one of the older VFRs, the Interceptor that he was racing at the time, which was a former factory bike, I think. And so we felt pretty good about that because Doug was an up and coming road racer coming out of the flat track stuff. So yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, we had, like I said, we had contact with Brian at American Honda, and we were able to pick up the phone and call him if we needed something. And he was really good about getting us what we needed as soon as he could get it to us. So I think the most of what we gained over the season was just familiarization with the bike, because previously we had been on Suzuki's, and so it was pretty different for us coming from the GSXR to V4 and Honda in general. So yeah, and I think the bike certainly wasn't the best bike in the field, but Tom really made it work and had some great success.
Yeah, and I know Tom had I think a mechanical issue at Shannonville, but was right there running on a track that he had very little experience on compared to a Ruben McMurder or Michel Mercier. Going into that National in '87 at Westwood, how confident were you guys that Tom was going to finally get his first National Superbike win?
Well, honestly, not that confident, because at that time, the competition level was pretty high, as Darryl and Steve will attest. I mean, it was no gimme to come in there, even having the experience we had and racing in the AMA and having pretty good success there. It was, coming into Westwood, even though it was our home track, we were not, we weren't thinking that we were going to walk in and dominate by any means. And sure enough, I mean, it was a tough race, and we knew Steve was going to be on the same equipment as us pretty much, and Darryl and several other guys were all capable of winning the race, or any race at any particular time there. So yeah, it was we took it seriously, and it was fun at the same time, but it was one of those things that we realized that we didn't have many opportunities to win nationals at that time, so that was one we felt like we at least had a shot.
Steve, Dick, you were the guy who battled in that '87 Superbike race at Westwood with Tom Walther. You guys had raced, of course, at all of the Westwood regular rounds. Going into that weekend, what did you think your chances were, given the fact you were on a similar bike? But I don't know whether your Honda was better, faster than what Rick Hobbs had built for Tom. Handicap those two motorcycles and the two riders.
Yeah, the Tom's had a lot more trick bits on it, and he had more time racing at a higher level with it. But with anything that's race orientated, it's a lot of work to keep it tuned and working perfectly, and so on. So a lot more setup. The more you modify it, the more setup is required, right? And mine was a little bit more stock, but still not that far off. And I remember, Rick, you were saying about the bits. I know partway through the season, it was before the National, you guys actually gave me a set of HRC carburetors. because HRC had given you a newer, a bigger, better set.
Right.
And I think you gave them to me. I don't know. I don't remember paying them for them, but maybe I did. I don't remember. But they made the world of difference. Like that, the bike really needed to breathe, of course. Like I believe we had put pistons in it and stuff. So, but I think we're still running stock cams. But honestly, yeah, Len Kerr did all the major mechanical work on it. And I was so busy with, racing other bikes as well, plus running a service department there at Allied Motorcycles at the time. And so I kind of forget at what stage it was at. But the one thing I do remember is that going into that race, Tom and I were really comfortable racing together. And of course, because we'd been doing it for a few years. And although I found that he always had more grip than I did, even though we both were running Metzler tires, is because he was about 70 pounds heavier than me, right? So I didn't need as much motor to stay with him because I know he had more motor, but he had more grip. And actually that's what happened on the second last lap. Like on that race, I think because we were so comfortable, we were just pushing each other. And apparently after the race, I was told that every single lap was a lap record. Like we just kept going faster and faster and faster and faster as the race went on because we just kept pushing each other. And it was an unbelievably fun race. And to race with one of your best friends and to push that hard. And I don't know how far back third place was, but it was mainly just a race of Tom and I, right? And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And anyway, so on the second last lap, I was drafting him up Deer's Leap and coming over the top of the leap. His front end went in the air and my front end went in the air, like as you wheelie over Deer's Leap. And because I was in his wake, the buffeting off of his bike and his body being bigger got my bike into a bit of a wobble. And then when I came down, my bike tank slapped so violently that I accidentally hit the kill switch off. And there was so much going on. I knocked it back on, then I knocked it off again, then I knocked it back on again because I was just trying to hold on to the bike. And so on that last lap, that's how I ended up with the lap record, because I tried to make everything that I lost, I tried to make it up in the last lap, and I almost did. I was about a half a wheel short, but boy, that was so much fun. And I don't regret finishing second because it was such a good race for Tom, but I certainly, it was a battle the whole way, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Steve, in preparation for tonight, I went back and I looked at a couple of videos. Looks like you had the lead on the last lap over Deer's Leap into the hairpin, and I think Tom came up the inside and just was able to sneak by. Clean pass, but you guys just put on an incredible show. And for the record, third place was a long way back. That was Michel Mercier, but he was a long way back from you two guys. How close was it at the line? It looked like they may have needed a photo finish camera.
Yeah, it was half a wheel. I wasn't quite sure who had won because because I was closing on him, like I come out of the draft and was trying to get by. I wasn't sure if I had won or not, and I looked over at Tom, and Tom was pretty sure he had won. So I thought he's probably right. And but I guess we found out when we came in after the cool-off lap, but to be sure who won. But yeah, it was close. It was about a half a wheel.
And what did you say to him once you guys finally got back
into
the paddock?
Just congratulations. Like, it was just such an awesome race. He was such a good friend, and to have such a battle, but clean, back in those days, Gary Goodfellow was racing too. And Gary was a good friend too, but Gary was definitely believed that, Rubbin's racing. And whereas Tom and I were a little cleaner riders. And we had some close passes, but it was all good, and it was amazing. It was really, I'm really glad he won. And but I certainly was trying to beat him.
Oh, no, we could see that.
Yeah.
Rick Hobbs, I know we've got Tom's sister, Andrea, has tuned in tonight. You have worked with so many incredible riders in your career before getting into being a race director with Moto America. It's a long, long list. We talked about that when you were on the show a few weeks ago. To me, Tom was on the verge of really becoming, and he was one of our top riders, but really taking it to the next level. And how would you stack up his talent? Because really, he was only, I think that was only his 4th season racing. He came to the sport relatively late in his career.
Yeah, you know, it was, well, I mean, Tom and I became pretty close in a pretty short period of time because we spent so much time together. We were roommates. You know, we traveled, and we slept in the transporter the whole time, and I used transporter pretty loosely. But you know, we actually had some great times, and you know, some memorable times. And you know, it was really nice because you know, Tom's whole family was involved, and you know, it was a great support system for Tom and myself. And you know, it was always really nice to make that final leg home to Vancouver, you know, from wherever we were coming home from. And you know, that national at Westwood was one of the times where we just felt like, wow, it's so nice to just sleep in our own beds, and you know, see our friends and family. And you know, it was, you know, when people talk about, you know, those are the golden days, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's really true. I mean, everybody was family in a sense, you know, from Westwood. And you know, we would race together and hang out together. And so it was really you know, really just a warm feeling to go back to Westwood after traveling all over Canada and the US.
Yet, Darryl Fletcher, one of the things that always impressed me when we come out there for a national is that sense of family, sportsmanship, camaraderie that existed with the Westwood Motorcycle Road Racing Club. Is that something that exists today, even though Westwood has been closed for over 30 years? Does that still exist at Mission, where you guys now have your races?
Sorry, you kind of froze on me a bit there, so I didn't get that whole question. But
no, I'm just talking about the sense of family and camaraderie that existed back then at Westwood. Has that continued on as part of the road racing club to the races going on at Westwood?
Oh yeah, it sure has. I don't know how I ended up racing again, because I was really only new track days, but for the most part, it was new people, and there was some of the folks that had been around back in the 80s were still there, but the young guys have kind of like taken the old guy here as one of their own, and they invite me dirt riding and all sorts of stuff, and it's the same type of people, just mainly some younger ones. And before I knew it, I had to go racing just to hang out with these folks.
Yeah, and we'll touch on it a little bit later, but I heard you had a pretty good 2021 season. Steve Dick, I know you teach at some of the road racing schools at Mission. Any thoughts about getting back racing?
No, I'm, it's nice. Area 27 is only 4 kilometers from where I live.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's pretty special. And I'm a member, so I can go up there 14 days a month and just ride or drive my car. And you know, it's like family up there too. Everybody knows each other and stuff, and it's really fun. So yeah, I'll just, you know, in fact, I don't think I've ever arrived at the track before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I wait until it gets nice and warm, and I've had my breakfast, and then I have had my lunch, and then I load the trailer, and then I go up and I do like 2 sessions, and then, you know, we have drinks and chats in the pits until they kick us out. And then it's 4 kilometers back home again. So it's pretty nice. It's but we, you know, back in the Westwood days, we had several house parties, and all the top guys were there. Almost the whole club was there. All the girlfriends. Geez, I remember, Darryl, a party at my house, and Penny was running interference for me. She came up to me partway through the party, and she said, "Steve, I didn't know better. I'd say you've got 2 girls here." And I said, "Yes, you're right." And she says, "Well, I see you've got one in the living room and one out on the back deck." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "You're right." She says, "Well, do you want me to keep one busy while you're with the other one?" I said, "Oh, that would be so good." But that's the kind of the fun we used to have, right? We were all such good friends, and it was a huge loss and a real reality check when we lost Tom. That was quite the shock for all of us. And I really appreciate the fact that you've taken that project on and are going to restore Tom's bike. That's amazing. That's going to be great.
Darryl, I know we've got some questions. I want to go to Stuart and Odell, but what are your plans for the bike once it is finally finished? I know for a while it was in the Dealey Museum at Dealey Harley Davidson there in Burnaby. What are your plans for the bike? Will it go back into the museum, or will you take it out to Mission when it's ready for one of the race weekends? What is the thought there?
Initially, I was thinking to take it out to Mission for Westwood events, and maybe once or twice a year run it during the lunch break for a few laps, because it is really a cool sounding engine. That V4, there's really not much like it. The Aprilias kind of sound like it, but that Honda V4 sounds really, really spectacular. That was kind of my thinking. If the museum wanted it for a while, I would definitely do that. It was you actually that threw out the idea, why don't you go vintage racing with it? And I hadn't really thought of that, and I'd be kind of concerned about wearing out unobtainable parts, but as long as the thing is maintained and available for people to see, that's kind of my main focus.
Yeah, no, I was just looking at sort of the popularity of the vintage heavyweight superbike class that ARMA in the US has made its sort of its ARMA Cup class for 2022, but we'll see. I want to go to Stuart and Odell. Stuart, I think we've got a few questions in the Q&A, and again, for everyone who is on tonight, feel free to send us a question or a comment in the Q&A, and Stuart will share it with everyone. Stu?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. The first comment more comes in for all the guys, and it's from Kevin Forsyth, former Westwood racer, number 82. Just wanted to say hi to the guys.
Hi, Kevin.
And then the final thing, Sean Durrell has asked if Darryl Fletcher plans on bringing the VFR down to the Circle K. Doug Cadlick needs to know. So I'm sure there's an inside joke there.
Yeah, Circle K is the 1987 RZ Cup champions personal ranch where we can ride bikes and goof off all day. So yes, Sean, I will bring the VFR there if everyone wants to hear it.
And then just the final comment comes in from Nathan Naslin. Great seeing the three of you guys. Great memories of Tom in those races back at Westwood in the 80s.
Hey, Nathan.
Good.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan
Hi,
is
Nathan.
usually with us every Monday night. Steve and Darryl and Rick, feel free to hop in as well. That national in '87 at Westwood, and Steve and Tom were in a class of their own once they got to the superbike race. All of the top guys from the East were there, including the Rothmans Honda team of Paul McMillan and the late Art Robbins. What was the difference between their VFRs and the ones that Tom and you were racing, Steve?
I know with mine, I think we had some aftermarket pistons in it, and I think the exhaust, I'm trying to remember, it might have been Wolf exhaust that I had on mine, and I had, believe it or not, I had GSXR front end on it, and front wheel and brakes, and so mine was a bit hobcob together, but it worked really well. And I think because I had so much time on it at the one track mainly, although I did race it in Calgary as well, but it, I had it set up pretty well for the track, where Tom's, I think, if I remember right, had more trick bits on it. But of course, Rick, you guys were going all over the country, so you were I don't know if you had to change. In those days, I think you still had to change setup quite a bit here and there. And so, yeah, it's funny because in the race itself, when Tom and I battled, we really, we knew each other so well that he wasn't going to let me get away and I wasn't going to let him get away. And so we were just chasing each other down. Right. It was, it was the best race ever because it was a race between two really good friends. Right. And just for bragging rights, really. And so, but yeah, Tom's, I don't know, Rick, you could say more about what the difference is. I think the Rothman's bikes were pretty trick, at least as trick as yours, eh?
Oh yeah, they had well, Leitner and Bush had built the bikes, and they actually had some parts from Europe, Britain in particular. In fact, their crankshafts they had that changed the firing order on the engine. So there was a company in England that was taking the cranks and cutting them in two and twisting the crank and re-welding it to change the firing order. And so their bikes had a different firing order, more along the lines of what you would hear from a current V4. And so, at that time, I'm not sure that there was any performance benefit, but it sure sounded different. And they had a few other things. I mean, Leitner and Bush had a very well-equipped shop. They had a lot of experience and built a lot of parts for the bike that were basically one-offs that only the team bikes had there. So, and they were a I hate to say it, but a more professional setup than Tom and I and Steve. Pretty much, any of the West Coast guys. We pretty much sorted things out for ourselves. We didn't really have access to a lot of the machinery that Leitner and Bush had, but we had some pretty good people with a lot of good experience helping us out. And I remember actually that race during practice, Art's bike had a problem. It dropped a valve or broke a valve spring or something, and his crew was very skeleton. He didn't have all of his crew there, and he especially didn't have his engine builder there. So in the spirit of racing back then, we all kind of helped each other out. So we took his engine over to the little garage we had behind the house that Tom and I shared, and I think it might have even had a dirt floor. I don't remember exactly, but we pulled the thing apart, found out what was wrong, and then we really didn't have a lot of parts to spare, but we had Lance Hayward, pretty renowned West Coast cylinder head guy, helping us, and he suggested a couple things we could try to do, and so we wound up putting that back together for Art so he could race it that weekend. But I do remember that the crew, when they arrived the next day and found out that we had taken the engine apart and put it back together, and that they were arriving to that on Saturday morning, I guess, it was they weren't really happy, I guess I would put it that way. So.
I did some homework on VFRs and the HRC kit, and it's been a lot of fun since we've got a hold of Tom's bike. I've talked to Ruben. He put me on to Kevin Dilliot. This fella named Brian O'Shea in the States called Mr. Superbike has a bunch of, like, an ex-Bubba Schobert VFR and all these things. But one fella that got a hold of me, Steve, is Brian Smith. And he told me that he and Len and you got your bike working really, really well using Cosworth pistons, Carrillo rods, and Megacycle cams. And, and the aforementioned carburetors that you got from Rick and Tom. So it was really, really cool to see how, no disrespect to Leitner and Bush or those teams are riders, but the combination of Tom Walther and Rick Hobbs and the combination of Steve Dick, Len Kerr, and Brian Smith were pretty formidable opponents to try and go head to head with at Westwood.
Now, Darryl, you showed those big bad teams from the East. I believe back then the Rothmans Honda team had the very first big tractor trailers. It was a very professional looking squad, but they finished, I think, a little bit further back that weekend. Stuart and Odell, I think we've got a few more questions or comments in the Q&A, and then I think we want to go to those photos that both Darryl and famed photographer Bill Petro sent us.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I'll try and go through them here pretty quickly. Just some comments here from Bill Jenkins saying hi to the guys and wants to see that VFR on the track. That's his vote.
You got it, Bill. It's gonna happen.
Hey, Bill.
And then Mel Gantley's asked that I know that he's spoken to Darryl about writing an article on this project, but he'd also love to have Rick and Steve be involved in the article. Maybe they can set up the time to have whether it's a phone call or a Zoom session on their own.
Sure.
Great. Thanks, Mel.
And from Henry DeGow for Rick Hobbs, what is the story on the bike that Art Robbins rode in the 1987 Macaw GP? He believes it was the Honda 750.
That was Tom's bike, and Macau happened after Tom had passed, and Art had been racing on the Rothmans Honda, but they weren't willing to allow him to take their bike to Macau. So Art worked out a deal with the Walthers to use Tom's bike, and so I went with him as his crew, and actually he did quite well until the race, when I think he might have gotten a little over enthusiastic and chucked it down the road. But fortunately the damage wasn't too bad, but that paid his chances in the race. But if I recall correctly, I think we qualified in the top 10, and he was running in the top 10 in the race. But as you may or may not know, there is very little margin for error at Macau, and yeah, Art stepped over that line. So there is a funny story that I'm sure Henry remembers quite well about the post-race party, and Art being Art was quite entertaining, let's say. And so for Henry, it was a bit of a problem, because we had all of these, the car teams were there as well, and all of these different teams from all over the world, and Henry grabbed me by the elbow and said, "Man, you got to get Art out of here before he says or does something." And so yeah, we had to get Art out of the dinner. It was actually a dinner, a sit down dinner, not a party, and so I had to escort him back up to our room and rejoin them. So every time I see or talk to Henry, we reminisce about that experience.
Funny.
Stuart Odell, what else have we got in the Q&A? And then I want to go to those photographs.
Okay, just from Andrea Ferber, she just wanted to say hello from the Ferber family. It's been really wonderful to witness this discussion full of great, memorable stories.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Andrea.
Andrea.
Hi.
All right, I'll share my screen, Pat, and you want to go through the photos?
Well, I think Rick Hobbs, Darryl Fletcher, and Steve Dick can probably comment as well on these photographs. Darryl sent many of those to us. Darryl, why don't you start?
Sure. These two, one's a poster that the Walther family had done after Tom's death. I don't have one. I would love to have one if anyone has it.
There is a copy of that on the tower at Shannonville. One of them has been there ever since 1987. And that's what the bike looked like that you're starting with?
Yeah, that's as it's been unloaded from the trailer and it's sitting on our back patio, and I just took a picture. That's how we got it from the Walther Ferber family about 4 weeks ago.
Wow.
These are off the internet, and I'm guessing Rick might recognize what track Tom's at with the 991 on. And then I thought the second picture was cool there because it's Pat Gonzalez interviewing Tom Walther at Westwood with the wreath on. So I thought that was a cool shot.
Yeah, that was, and of course, Tom always had the 1987 basketball style shorts. They were very in vogue back then. And that of course, Mike Dillon on the podium as well. He was with the Rothmans was sponsoring the event that year.
I don't recognize that previous photo of which track that was at, but I don't know the gentleman running in the background and the green tire should give me a clue, but it doesn't ring a bell.
It's a while ago, Rick. It's
yes, a couple of years. Yeah.
Is this one of the AMA nationals, Rick?
This current picture, I don't think. Well, yes, it must be because the 991. That must have been a Canadian race with the 991. This one with the hay bales in the background has got to be an AMA race.
Yeah, I think my memory's not perfect, and it's a while ago, but I seem to remember talking to Tom's mom Doris about this particular picture many years ago, and I'm gonna say this is Laguna Seca, and Tom had scored a 6th overall. It was running 2 legs, so I think he got an 8th and a 5th, and this is with a formidable AMA field. And I remember saying to Doris, how are we not hearing about this? And I think she just answered back, well, we're a small team from Canada, and they just don't know us yet.
Yeah, that's a great picture too. But just to go back a minute for the race at Laguna, and I don't recall what the circumstance was, but 3 Hondas were on the back row of the grid because of some infraction, and I don't know what it was, but it was Tom, Bubba Schobert, and Wayne Rainey. And so Tom basically latched onto the wheels of those 2 guys and charged through the pack, and wound up over the two legs of the race, scoring basically the same points, so to speak. He tied for 6th with, for 5th with, tied for 6th with Wayne, but Wayne had a better finishing position in the second leg, so he wound up getting the fifth place, and we wound up in sixth.
Mhm.
That is certainly great there from Westwood. Darryl Fletcher. There, of course, Tom on the 99, Steve Dick, and Steve Crevier on the 73, and is that number 10? I can't make that out. Some of the other local riders, but the racing there was superb throughout the 80s.
Yeah, I had to include that shot. I just thought it was great because it had Steve and Tom and myself all there. I don't know what happened that I somehow got the whole shot because that was pretty rare. Number 10, Pat, is the late Steve McKissick.
Oh, right.
This is 1990 season. I threw this in. I'm not sure why, but I guess because it had a cool Honda in it, which was the ex-Gary Goodfellow RC30 that I'm on, but also Steve Crevier is riding the number 1 there. I believe he was, maybe Rick would remember exactly, but I believe he was on the Yoshimura AMA team at the time, but had hurt himself, and he asked for permission to be able to ride Gary Goodfellow's bike. The coolest thing about this picture, though, is that number 0 behind us is Gary Goodfellow on the Britain, the one-off motorcycle that came out of the brilliant mind of John Britton in New Zealand.
Yeah, and I believe that was the second to last of the Britain bikes. And I think Westwood was the only track where that bike ever raced.
Yeah, I think you're right, Pat. Yeah. Gary brought that bike from New Zealand and ran it at Westwood. And Gary had kind of had a rough season the year before when he was a little bit hurt. He crashed out of the lead of Daytona and whatnot. So he kind of ran when it was sunny on that Britain, but Gary was still very, very fast. These two pictures are just, I think they might be from Bill, I think, but it's just a neat picture of Tom, you know, and the bike.
Yeah, I think, and our thanks to famed photographer Bill Petrol for providing some of the images here from his collection. And that is Michelle Mercier, Art Robbins, Tom right there beside, and it looks like Crevier running in fourth.
Yeah. Another great shot of Tom, helmet off and on the VFR with the 490 on. So I'm guessing that's at an AMA National, but I'm sure Rick would know better than I.
Yeah, looking at that picture, the pavement, that might be mid-Ohio.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The pavement was terrible there.
And the grid picture, I think, is Shannonville.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is definitely Shannonville in the glory days. Ruben McMurder leading Tom, and then I think you've got 185 Tommy Douglas, Crevier there. You can see the 3 of his 73. 5 is Clive Nigakeen, who was more famous for his 250 Grand Prix rides. Glenn Friend 32, Norm Murphy 87. I can see, and Art Robbins 47. But I don't think Tom raced a whole lot at Shannonville. Maybe 2 or 3 nationals there, but I think he was right there battling Rick, and you probably recall, I think there was some kind of mechanical problem with the bike that forced him out late. Otherwise, he was headed for a podium finish.
Yeah, I think we suffered a broken valve spring in that one, which was a somewhat common occurrence. But I wanted to point out too that one of the people that are on the announcer's notebook quite frequently is the yellow number 49 in the back there, Mr. Mike Walsh. So shout out, Mike.
Oh, right. You got, your eyes are better than mine, Rick. Yeah, Mike, who ran up here in Canada and made a few starts in the Daytona 200 as well. And yeah, Mike's quite often on the show.
Yep.
Here's Tom.
And there's Rick.
Is that
There's,
Rick?
uh,
Rick is in the background as well. I had to scroll.
Yeah,
There's the both of you after winning the national, narrowly beating Steve Dick.
yep.
Yeah, and Steve, we chatted briefly about this, but back then you were on the CFMI Rock 101 sponsored bike as your motorcycle stores were advertising on those stations, and then got involved promotionally with them. And for Tom Walther, he was with the Fox 99.3 in Vancouver. And that, of course, the mascot was there that weekend and went out for the victory lap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that
was
was-
pretty cool. Eh?
That was cool, but a funny anecdote about that is when they came back in after the parade lap with the mascot on the back, he left a big patch of burnt fake fur all over the muffler on the bike.
That is funny.
That's a great shot.
Yeah.
Wow. Wonder where that would be.
Yeah,
It's got to
I-
be Shannonville or Mossport, maybe.
My guess is Shannonville turn 1.
Oh,
never-
yeah.
yeah, we didn't race at Mossport with that bike, as I recall, but yeah, that's got to be Shannonville.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
Uh,
one of my favorites. I don't, Steve and Rick might remember this, but you can see that the paint color scheme has changed on Tom's bike to just a red and white instead of the factory Honda red, white, and blue colors that it had. So I mean, kind of after some input on whether it should be restored with that paint job on it or with the original VFR one.
Yeah, my personal preference would be the original factory colors. I mean, that was the way we mostly raced the bike. I think the red and white scheme only was late in the season.
Okay,
So
thanks for that, Rick. That's
Yeah,
a great
absolutely.
shot, and that's just how close Steve and Tom were all the time. And
Oh, yeah.
the other thing about those two fellas that I'm sure they remember is that just incredible people. Like Tom in particular was just loved by everyone and just a kind person and a gentle soul, but he had this incredible talent and speed on the racetrack as well. And I remember talking to Steve Crevier about him, and Crevier credits Tom Walther for calming him down a little bit and taking a little bit of anger out of him and making him a better rider and a better person.
Yeah.
Here's a great shot of Tom and his mom at Westwood. Rick, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a very familiar picture. That's a good one for sure. And another little note that, I don't know why I remember this stuff, but the car behind Doris is actually Tom's dad's. That's Gerhardt's little 2002 BMW.
Wow.
Is
Yeah.
it's still in the family. Sorry to cut you off, Steve, but it's still in the family. It's going to Tom's niece, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
That's great.
And I think that's Steve McKissick over with the just the bottom leathers on, and it looks like no shirt
Yeah.
in the top left.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
These two pictures, I believe I got from Kim Ferber, Andrea Walther's husband, and that's how the motorcycle looked. I think when it was at the Dealey Museum, it's that red and white scheme I was talking about. So it's later in the season, you're saying, Rick?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I don't think I've ever seen these pictures, but yeah, great shots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the earlier paint scheme. Looks like a Westwood victory lap, probably
Yep.
again narrowly beating the amazing Steve Dick.
Yeah, I don't. My memory is fading these days, but yeah, that could. Well, I guess that. I wonder if that's the national before the mascot got on the bike, maybe.
I was wondering about that, but the threes miss. It's 99 instead of the 993.
Oh, right,
So, yeah.
right. Okay, yeah.
So that would have to have been a club race, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And Steve, you teamed up, I think, a number of years ago with Darryl, and you guys won the 6 hour. I think this is '86 at Westwood when you guys used to run a 6 hour endurance race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I remember it because I think we did it on a Monday, on a holiday Monday, and so maybe it was Labor Day, you know, at the end of the season. And I know because I flew back from Calgary, and I didn't have my bike, and so this is Darryl's bike, and the guys, and Darryl told me, you know, as soon as I went out for morning practice, he said, "Hey, somebody dumped some oil in the hairpin, and you know, it's small, but it's pretty slippery, so just be careful." And of course, what did I do? First lap, I hit it and crashed right before it, because the race was starting early, right?
Yeah.
So we had overheating problems because we had to replace the radiator, and I think I'd bent the rad cap. That's right, where the cap goes on, and so we didn't get it filled up properly, and so the thing overheated every time we stopped to get fuel. We had to pop the rad cap off. All the water would come out. We'd pour a bunch more cool water in, put the cap back on, fill the bike up with fuel, and off we go again. Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
And this is at the Westwood Motorcycle Racing Club's awards banquet.
Yeah, this is, I think, 1990, and it's Tom's mom presenting me with the Tom Walther Memorial Superbike Cup, which Steve won in later years at Mission. But I had a look at the trophy this year, and the base is different, and it doesn't include the winners from the actual Westwood track. The current one has a different base, and it starts at, I think, 2001. But it's a neat moment with Doris Walther and myself, though. So I thought it should definitely be shown.
Yeah.
And of course, Doris, Gerhard, and Tom all got inducted into the Canadian Motorcycle Hall of Fame in 2010, and fittingly so. Rick, I guess this is Darryl and Penny meeting up with you at one of the Moto America rounds.
Yeah, that was at COTA 2019, and yeah, it was so great to see you guys there. It had been quite a few years, so it was really great to see you. And I'm not sure if it was that year or the previous year, but Dave Grummett also was there, and it was the first time I had seen him in many years as well. So you know, just really, really great to see everybody, you know, again, and to share memories. And you know, it's like I said, you know, it was a great community we had, and I think you know, to have all those years go by and still have those connections is great.
Yeah, it sure was, Rick, and I thought it was really cool. We were on the road for several months, and you actually messaged us on the road inviting us to your pit. I just thought that was really phenomenal, and we made sure we came say hi.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
Stuart, I know we've run a little bit over time. This has been an amazing walk down memory lane, remembering the great Tom Walther and talking about Darryl Fletcher's project to rebuild his Honda Superbike. Darryl, I can't wait to see the finished product. But since we've got Rick Hobbs here, and I know there's several on board, Rick, we haven't had you on for a few weeks. What's the latest on the Daytona 200? We saw the 110% qualifying rule. Any other news about the Daytona 200 that you can share? I believe entries are currently open.
Yes, yeah, I think they opened yesterday, the day before. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have all the latest information, but I know there's some there are some things that are still kind of in the works, but I think there was a question the last time I was on about if there was going to be a pit lane speed limit, and I think I can, for the most part, confirm there will be. But you know, there's still some time for everything to be finalized and made official. But I think that that pretty much everyone can count on there being a pit lane speed limit, which will be different for the 200. But my opinion is it's a good thing. It's a safety thing, and you know, the bikes are pretty fast these days, and even 600s. You know, we're going the speeds that we were going on 750 superbikes. So I know there's going to be some people disappointed. You know, some of the let's say more mature riders that will try to participate might want the way it was previously, but I think it's the right way to go. You know, beyond that, I think the classes that will participate in that weekend have been established, and the rules package as far as you know, the engine configurations and which models are going to be allowed and so on, which brands and models. That's been pretty much sorted out. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting and exciting to be back at Daytona, and it's been a few years, Pat, since I've seen you there, but I'll be sure to look you up, and I'm assuming that you'll be there again. It's pretty traditional, so
Yeah, looking forward to getting down there, and now that I'm retired from my Monday to Friday job, hopefully get a few weeks down there, a little bit of time before and after. Well, that's gonna wrap up our track announcers notebook tonight. Great visiting with Rick Hobbs, Darryl Fletcher, and Steve Dick. Rick, Darryl, and Steve will give you one final thought as we took a little bit of a walk down memory lane. Looking forward to seeing that bike, but also getting a chance to pay tribute to a great person and a great rider in Tom Walther tonight.
Yeah, and I just like to say again that I'm not sure that I would have wound up where I am at the moment without you know, my time with Tom and his family and the support they gave us. So I want to make sure to thank, you know, Andrea and Doris and Kim, of course, and Darryl, especially for taking on the task of bringing the bike back to its former state and you know, paying tribute that way. It's been a great pleasure to be on here with you guys and to spend a little time reminiscing.
Thanks, Rick. We appreciate it. Darryl?
Yeah, I just, it's really neat, this show. I really started to enjoy it, and just to be able to talk to Rick and Steve and yourself and Stuart, it's been so much fun. But I wanted to thank the Walther family, you know, Kim and Andrea, for just giving me this opportunity. I'm going to try and do a good job, so I probably won't fly at it because I am getting a little older and I still want to do maybe another season on my ZX10 as well. So I'm going to, you know, put my split my time between those two projects, but you know, we'll try and get that Tom Walther bike looking good as soon as we can.
Steve Dick?
Well, it's quite a pleasure to run down memory lane and see you guys, and especially Rick. We haven't chatted in quite a while, and we go way back to the days of Vancouver Suzuki, and back in 82, 83.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But and I'm really happy, Darryl, that you're taking on that project and bringing Tom's bike back to what everybody remembers. And thanks to Tom's family, to the Walthers. It's quite something. Hopefully I'm still working these days. I'm not that not retired like you. But I would like to get a chance to see Doris again sometime soon. I got to make a point of doing that. So maybe we can go together at some time, because I'm down on the coast, you know, at least 2 weeks out of every month. So
Right.
maybe we can make that a plan. And even
Yeah,
see,
well,
and I haven't
yeah.
seen Andrea and Kim forever either.
Yeah, that's true. I can see you anytime in Oliver, but I always enjoy hanging out with you. If you do come down to the coast, you're welcome to stay, and we'll try and hook up with Andrea. Maybe we can go see Doris. Same goes for you as well, Rick, if you're ever in town.
Yep, well, I'm hoping that the border situation remains open.
Yeah.
And we can do some traveling back and forth. I would love to do that.
Right on.
Awesome.
Well, Rick, Darryl, and Steve, thanks once again for coming on the show tonight. It certainly brought back some great, sweet memories for me and my trips out to Westwood and all the great people out there. Stuart, no doubt?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. This was awesome hearing you guys reminisce about racing in the 80s. It was a little before my time. I remember watching as a fan because I was still a young kid, but this was awesome to be a part of this. And I'm definitely looking forward to Darryl's restoration of Tom's bike.
Perfect.
Well, that'll wrap it up. Thanks for everyone for joining us on Track Announcers Notebook tonight.